Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Lonely Wrist. Today, of course, if you're watching from YouTube, you can see my buddy Peter from Jack Mason sitting in front of us today. What's up, Peter?
How's it going, guys? Happy to be
What's up,
here. Thanks
Peter?
for having me.
Good to see you,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, depending on the time, we have two watches for, or had two watches for review. I personally was in love with the Hydra Timer. And Justin, I know you had the
Had the
Ellum.
Ellum. Yes, sir.
So thanks for that, Peter. And those were
Of
those were
course.
both awesome. I
Yeah, of
remember
course.
Justin was sending me wrist pics like probably like every day with your watch on.
I was super hyped, man.
so, so yeah, let's jump right into the first question. Like, why did you start Jack Mason, and how did your
Mhm.
journey with watch design begin?
Yeah, it goes back quite a bit. I, unlike a lot of the other micro brands out there, I'm kind of traditionally trained watch designer. I went to design school, studied industrial design, and then when I graduated, um, I got a job at a watch company on the East Coast called Movado, and that's uh, that's where my watch journey started. I didn't know anything about watches before that. I just took the job because it was a job out of college. And then when upon joining the company and really getting introduced to the world of watches, it really, blew my mind. And I was, early on, I was like, okay, this is something I want to do for a very long time. And I was very fortunate to also be sent over to their Swiss office in La Chaux-de-Fonds. So I spent some time there studying watch design under some of their more seasoned designers, and that's when I really started to grow an appreciation for kind of the art behind
Yeah.
watches as opposed to just like a commodity. And ever since then, that's just how I look at watches. It's the form factor, the just kind of the relationship of all how all the components come together, um, and really trying to come up with a design that has like a harmony to it, and not even just visual, but just how it wears, the materials that you use, all that sort of stuff. And so it's kind of been ingrained in my head. And uh, upon coming back to the states, I just gained more experience. I hopped around a bunch of different brands at Movado. They own a lot of licenses, so mainly in like the
Hmm.
fashion watch space. So I was doing watches for Hugo Boss. I was doing watches for Tommy
Wow.
Hilfiger. All those brands that you see like at a mall. But it was fun. It was fun, and I wanted to expand my skill set, and so I
Hmm.
primarily was on men's watches, and so I really wanted to learn women's watches. And so I took a job at Fossil Group here uh, in the Dallas area here in Texas. That's why I moved down here. And I took a job at Michelle. Michelle Watches is like a kind of a entry luxury women's brand that just has a lot of diamonds on it, and it's just really
Sure.
uh, flamboyant in a way. But it was just something different, and I was like, I just this is really just to gain experience, and so upon arriving here, did the same thing, just bounced around different brands, worked a little bit on mainly Michelle, but also
Hmm.
kind of participated in other brands like you know Burberry, Armani. Launched a few brands there, like Tory Burch watches, and
Cool.
all these different things. And so eventually, I was on Skagen watches, which was really cool. I mean, that whole kind of Scandinavian design philosophy
Yep. They're from
and all that
Denmark, right?
stuff. Yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Scoggins are pretty sweet.
yeah, no, it was kind of like the early, uh, you know. Just sort of the they were known to be like super slim because they were using
Mhm.
really thin quartz movements, and then you just the way you design the case and all that stuff. Um, and then around that time, that was 2014 ish, 2013 ish. I kind of started formulating in my head, okay, I if I were to start a brand, what would it look like? And so uh, that's how things just started like shaping. And in parallel, there were a couple friends of mine who had started this sort of uh, accessories brand, and at that was called Jack Mason brand. But they were not doing kind of like higher end watches. It was mainly
Mhm.
um, accessories like wallets. They did watches, but it was like more uh, just lower end, more novelty style watches. And the whole premise behind that brand was it was collegiate licensing. So they were making watches for like 53 different universities, wallets,
Oh,
handbag. I mean,
wow.
you name it, everything,
Yeah.
everything. And so because that was they came from kind of the sales background, and so they had kind of gotten this started. I don't know, a little less than a year prior, and um, upon having conversations with them, it was like, hey, what if a brand had started that was originally a watch brand to like an independent watch brand,
Right.
um, and a little bit, nicer quality than the ones that were currently sitting at the mall at that time. So when you walk into a Nordstrom and you see kind of like all those brands that I had previously worked for, what would that look like? And so that was 2015 when we officially launched the brand. So I joined forces, and it was just a few of us, and I came from the design side, while my other business partners were more on the operations and sales side of things. And so it was kind of like a great perfect union from that standpoint. And I knew right out of the gate like exactly what this thing was going to look like, the brand,
Yeah.
just because of all the experience I had gained. At that point in time, it was like over 10 years of watch design experience. And so um, yeah, that's kind of how it started. And you know right out of the gate, we they'd say timing's everything, and our timing was impeccable at that time. In that fashion watch space, it was it was at the height of Michael Kors watches. Yeah, everybody knows. It was everywhere. You couldn't pass uh, uh, a girl who is into fashion without seeing a Michael Kors on their wrist. And so we sort of kind of took advantage of that at that time, at least in that market. And we launched the men's focused brand, and saw early success. And that's kind of that's how it started. I mean, I designed an entire collection. And when you start
Mhm.
a fashion brand, it's not just you start off with one watch. You got
Sure,
to
sure.
design an entire case, like
Yep. A
36
catalog
SKUs.
essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. That sits inside inside a case at a department store. And so, our Nordstrom was our first account. And it kind of blew up from there. So there was yeah, so that initial part of launching the brand was really, I mean, we were really fortunate in
Yeah, and that
scale.
probably
Yeah.
got you guys a lot of traffic and stuff, especially, the Nordstrom customers and learning
Yeah.
your brand through those, doors. That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. I didn't know about the name as well, so that was really interesting to
Hmm.
hear about.
Yeah.
So Peter, can you explain like the design philosophy, especially with you being, big designer yourself,
Hmm.
but explain the design philosophy, kind of behind Jack Mason,
Yeah.
and how has it, kind of like evolved over the years?
Yeah. So the product quality uh, has kind of gone up throughout the years. We've fluctuated quite a bit, trying to um, really trying to find ourselves. Building a brand. Building a brand was very important to me, um, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But you know, one thing that me being a design product guy, the quality of the watch for who we were selling it to was always going to be better. That was kind of the philosophy. It was like always make the best product you can for the person you're selling it to.
Right.
So back then, we were selling it to the guy who was walking into a mall, wanted a nice looking watch, didn't want to pay, and not even $1,000, like actually not even $500, right, for a watch that looked good, and that wasn't kind of cheap, right? And so, um, for me, when I started, I was like, okay, well, let's look at all um, the most iconic watches in history.
Sure.
So, tool watches, so dive watch, pilot's watch, racing watch, uh, kind of a nautical themed watch, field watch. So that's how Jack Mason actually started. We created all these buckets, and we fed into these buckets with the product. And so the design philosophy was always very American. It was always very classic. It was always supposed to be approachable, and it still is today. I mean, you don't see us doing the craziest colors, and that's kind of by design as well.
Mhm.
Um, it's supposed to be approachable. It's supposed to be a watch that you can wear, um, every day. I mean,
Yep.
it almost sounds like bad business practice when you say, we're happy if you just buy one watch that you can wear every day. But ultimately, if you were to buy one watch, it'd be great if you owned one of ours. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of that's always been the philosophy. And so while the product quality has now evolved in the last 3 years or so, um, because our audience has evolved, uh, but the design, in terms of the actual design philosophy, that has never changed since day one. It's actually kind of funny when we were in Nordstrom and selling to those guys. Uh, I mean, we were probably one of the very few brands that wasn't like Swiss made, that was using sapphire crystals. We were using
Yeah.
this was 2015, when micro brands weren't really a thing. I mean, I was throwing, the BG Super Luminova BGW9 loom on our watches, all sorts of interesting sort of dial materials and techniques and stuff like that. But for that guy, it went over their head. They're like,
You were a
"That's."
pioneer of your time, man.
I was like, "Oh man, you guys don't even know what this is." And so,
Yeah.
They're like,
uh,
what the hell's
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Well, it sounds like too if you guys were using Nordstrom's as your retail partner. I mean, it sounds like you were sitting in a case next to a ton of fashion brands, like you had
Yeah.
already came from the design experience, so you kind of
Mm,
were familiar with the type of products they were putting out and how they were
yeah.
casing them, how they were merchandising them, and how they were using distinct design language. And I mean, once you set a Jack Mason next to something like that, it's probably pretty easy to stand out. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, it
because
was. It
and
was.
of course, having little to new name cachet. You're sitting next
Mhm.
to a Versace watch. Like everybody knows
Yeah.
Versace, but
Right.
nobody at the time knows Jack
Hmm.
Mason. So
Yeah.
I guess it pushed you into going up market, but still,
Yeah.
we when we were texting about this kind of briefly, like because
Hmm.
I have like one of your early world timers,
Yeah.
and I was going to Europe, and I don't even know how I stumbled upon the brand, but I was like, hey, look, I'm going to be in Europe. I'm going to be working remotely. Like, I need a world timer, and I think I picked it up. I mean, it was you guys were like clearing them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so picked it up. I wore it for I don't know, like 2 years. Never had
Hmm.
any issues with it, and
Yeah.
I actually think I just replaced the battery on it.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
but
Yeah, that had the
anyways,
Swiss the Ronda GMT quartz movement. Yeah.
is all you needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember when it came in, and yeah, I think you guys were just doing some marketing, and I mean, you guys were everywhere. You guys
Hmm.
plastered the brand everywhere, and I was like,
Hmm.
hey, you can't beat this for the
Yeah.
value. and of
Yeah.
course naturally, and then I think my friend bought one too, so he bought one as well. Like we bought one together. Um, but yeah, it's just been crazy because I was an early customer before I knew you, and
Yeah, that's crazy to know.
to see how you've evolved. Um,
Yeah.
and as you've gone up market, it's just I mean, now again, obviously I've seen your watches at the shows, and we've brushed
Mhm.
shoulders there. But having a chance to spin one for I don't know how long I had it, probably probably longer I
Mhm.
should have, but but uh, but no, it was a really fun experience, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you have a really great product. I mean, it's hard to
Yeah.
beat
No, thank
the
you.
value for
I'm
sure.
I'm curious real quick, and sorry to interject. Like, how long have you guys been doing the red, white, and blue on the seconds tip? Because I'm curious
Since
about that.
since day one, there
Since
were
day
two
one,
things.
love it.
Since literally two things that never changed was the red, white, and blue tip, and then the Lone Star on the crown. Those were two signature markings, and so that
I
was,
love that.
you
Because
know,
you essentially like we were talking about in terms of design philosophy, you already
mhm,
had that concreted. Like before you
mhm,
even made this, and we're like, oh, like we're kind of going upstream. Like let's do some different things. You were like, nope, like I want to do these features that make us stand out.
mhm.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, and I think that kind of the experience factor comes into play, right? It wasn't just like, hey, I'm just gonna start a watch brand, and we'll, source some parts and things like that. Actually, from day one, there has not been a single part that's just open market. Even our fashion, when we were a fashion brand, um, it was all the cases, everything. I it was designed. It was ground up design. We pay for our own
Right.
tools. We pay for all that stuff, and so um, again, for me, wanting to establish ourselves as a brand, well, a brand has to have an identity, and the way you have an identity is you have certain signature uh, whether it's markings or colors or whatever it may be. Um, you know, we knew we had to establish that, from the get go. It wasn't going to be, we'll just try this and then try that and whatever.
Mhm.
So it was really important to me to uh, have some sort of brand identity, from the get go. Now that evolves through time. The brand evolves through
Right.
time, but um, we knew we wanted to be American. We knew we wanted to lean into Texas a little bit, so that's why we have the Lone Star. Um, so that I think that's where we have a lot of pride in ourselves and the experience factor. I think um, it's actually yeah, feel fortunate to be able to have that kind of experience to then translate that into our own brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Definitely.
what would you say is the most challenging part of design? Um,
Mhm,
Obviously, like I was when we were texting, like, and everybody was listening, like, Peter has an awesome YouTube series about designing the
mhm,
watches, which is
Yeah.
so cool to see how they
mhm,
come together and land on your wrist.
mhm,
So everybody should definitely go check that out. But I'm curious. I mean, when I think about a watch and I think about challenging execution, I think about like case shape and case
mhm.
architecture, and I think from there everything else could fall in. But I mean, what would you say is the most challenging part of watch design?
I think I think the most challenging part is uh, forming. It sounds almost philosophical, but forming the right relationship between each component. So the case to the dial opening to the space between the indices and the dial opening, and then how the indices play with the the form factor of the handset, and even then you kind of like go back to the case and if the overall design language is very angular, then do you want to continue that sort of form factor through the to the dial, and all that stuff, which you very much can, uh, but sometimes just because one part is angular doesn't mean the entire watch has to be angular, or if one part is rounded, it doesn't mean the whole thing. So then you start just kind of playing with shapes, with different sort of surface techniques to balance the overall appeal. And so it's all these little nuances, because the watch is so small, all these little nuances make every difference. Like every quarter millimeter makes a difference. And I think those are the things that I feel like we're pretty good at, just because, throughout my career, I've designed now like thousands of watches, right? Whether it's a fashion watch or a higher end watch, doesn't matter. It's a watch. And
Yep.
I think I have a pretty good idea now on, you know, for example, when you design a dial opening, understanding where you should start printing a minute track in relationship to the case wall, because there has to be
Mhm.
a certain distance to where it doesn't start distorting under a crystal, like if that's not the intention. But you need to leave some space there. Um, then where the indices start from the minute track and all these sorts of things. And so what I actually there was a video that I saw a long time ago, and it was actually about the Speedy, and the designer was talking about the relationship of the speed, the indices and the hands and all that. It was really interesting. So the hour hand is 3/4 of the length of the minute hand. The minute hand lands at 3/4 of the length of the indices, and like it sounds mathematical, but when you put
Yeah.
them all together, that's what makes this visual harmony.
Yes.
So, like, when you look at something, you're like, man, this looks really good, but I can't figure out why. Well, it's because of these things that someone has thought
That's
through,
right.
you know. Yeah.
there's
So,
there's a lot of instances that at least I feel like I see a lot of smaller brands, starting up that are kind of in that space and they're creating these watches, and they'll have a really good design, a really good dial, but there's always just something that it feels like it's not like a together piece. Like there's always something that's
right.
just a little different. And I've always thought about that as well. Like cohesively, how does this dial interact with the indices? How do the hands interact with, the minute track? So I mean, there's all sorts of things that I feel like people, you can really tell the difference in between a good quality startup compared to one that's just
Hmm.
kind of learning, because
Hmm.
they'll understand those things. Just like as you said, you look at a
Hmm.
Jack Mason watch, and there's all these little intricacies that you start to understand why they were done that way, because
Right.
in terms of a bigger picture, it
Right.
you glance at it and everything looks like it has a perfect spot. So
Right. Right.
So,
And yeah. Go ahead, Blake.
so something I've noticed too, and like my journey as a collector has been a very, very, very rocky road. But my first real, I guess, luxury watch was the Omega Speedmaster Reduced.
Mm.
So you may be familiar with the watch, but
Yeah.
essentially it's a 39 millimeter version of a Speedy, and the subdials are like miles apart from each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I could just never get over it. And then
Yeah.
so when you look at something every day, like you have to love it.
Yeah.
It
yeah,
has to be like in the weirdest way, like close to perfect. And so
Right.
I moved it on, and then I got the real Speedy,
Yeah.
and I mean that's an absolutely like stunner, amazing
Oh,
watch.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and now I have three Speedmasters, but
Oh, okay.
uh,
Cool.
but then going back to when you see and I read like, so I also have an IWC Mark 18, and the biggest critical like point on that watch was people were saying that the date window was in like too centered, and like it was off balance, and so people
Hmm.
hated it, and I personally don't see it, but as you wear these watches and they implement them into your daily routine, like you start to notice those small little imperfections. And
Right.
watch collectors are technical people. Like we're car guys, we're gun guys,
Yeah.
we're like
Yeah.
everyday carry knife guys, and
Coffee guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're into that, and good design like really is like I mean, it's a necessity for a
It
watch.
it is, and it's so hard to explain good design. It we are very much a design forward company. Not just even the watches, our branding with our team internally. I mean, we do all of our like video content, our emails, all the graphic design, our website, all that's done in house. And every email we send, every post that we put on our Instagram, we as a team, we sit together and we actually think through what words we use. And it sounds excessive, but every word, the tone in which you say something, across the internet, it could be translated a million different ways. And so
Yeah.
we're extremely, the word we like to use, or we're very, very intentional with everything we do. So, uh, any sort of ad, any digital ad we throw out there, it is extremely considered. Every Like I said, it's because that's all part of it's what I guess industry wide people start using the term design thinking, is something that we do, and so uh, I think that's well, we have a true deep passion in it. Just inherently, we enjoy doing that kind of thing. We actually enjoy spending time sitting down, talking through, like, deciding on what word to use on the next email headline, that kind of thing. It's just, I think going through that process, going through, yeah, that sort of exercise only just enhances the brand experience. Um, and you know what? Most people may not even get it, but I think when you add them all together, it creates this. There's a natural attraction to certain brands. But like, I have my own brands that I love, and the way they do certain things, and it's just like, oh wow, they really think everything through. And so guys like me, guys like watch people, honestly, there's an appreciation for every detail that's considered, and so that's certainly a philosophy of ours that we'll just continue to uh, try to improve upon, and test certain things. And yeah, we've certainly gone through a lot of different phases uh, of the brand. I mean, next year will be 10 years in business, which is a long time for brands in our
Yeah.
space. And so um, we have some special things planned for that. I mean, it'll be kind of like a 10-year anniversary year.
That's
So
awesome. I'm excited for
yeah,
that. Yeah, you guys
yeah,
are just kind of past those like initial, couple years whenever a lot of people don't make it. Hate to say that,
yeah.
as
Oh yeah.
negatively as that sounds, but there is that phase of starting a company within any
Hmm.
industry and
Yeah.
having those tough times and ultimately not succeeding. So glad to see that you guys are doing well. I'm excited for the 10 years. I know that'll be a cool one.
What
Go ahead, bud.
what has been, while we're on this design topic, and we're going to evolve here
Yeah.
into other questions, but designing thousands of watches, I mean, there's got to be one that is probably the most memorable. I mean, I know they're
Hmm.
all your babies, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
In the weirdest sense. So,
No.
I mean,
What's your
there's got
favorite child?
yeah, yeah. What's your favorite child? There's got to be one that you're like, this is like the tip of my
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
craft. Like I have reached the
Hmm.
peak of my
Hmm.
excellence here.
Yeah, so there's a few that come to mind. Um, so actually, early on in my career, this is when I was actually at Movado. There was a company initiative uh, back in, gosh, that was 20 or not, yeah, actually that was like 2008 maybe. That was a long time ago.
No.
They wanted to launch a brand, a sub brand within Movado called Movado Bold. And Movado Bold at that time, the whole idea behind it was they wanted to market to a younger demographic because Movado's like that old East Coast brand that obviously there's a lot, especially in the New York, New Jersey area, just Italians.
Hmm.
They got their gold chain and the gold Movado watch, and as that was the market. And so they wanted to appeal to a younger demographic, and so um, myself and a couple other designers at that time, there were two other designers. They were like, "Hey, we want to launch this brand. You guys launch it for us." And so uh, that was extremely exciting. Because that was the first time I was able to, or we had basically full autonomy on like um, what this thing would actually look like. Because the people who asked us to do it were the older people. They were like, "Hey, you young
Right.
guys, dream this up." And so we actually went through all this conceptualization. It was really cool, and then we came up with the first Movado Bold, which was made out of plastic. They called it TR90 plastic, and we made this super badass crystal that actually went edge to edge, like all the way with a nice like bevel on it. This was way back. I don't even know if they make it anymore, but there were bursts of color. There were
Yeah.
bursts of color in the inner case wall and all that stuff, and um, launched that. And I mean, that thing just blew. It's still like Movado Bolt still exists today. It's not what it used to be, but yeah, that was kind of a big um, sort of my last sort of big project at Movado before I came to Fossil. So that's
Hmm.
one memorable thing, and then I would say the second one was the first watch I designed when I launched Jack Mason, and that was our sort of pilot watch. It was an early rendition of kind of that world timer that you have, Blake. We called it the Pursuit, um, and that watch is just sentimental, just because it started the brand, and a little foreshadowing. It's probably going to make a comeback for our tenure, and so
Ooh.
yeah, that kind of thing,
You
and
you
I
pro-
would say this. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say you probably sold a crap ton of those things, man.
Yeah, yeah, we did. I mean, it was like for those who wanted an IWC, it was just kind of that sort of it filled
That
that
Flieger
that void.
style.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then this watch right here, the Strata Timer, this changed the game for the brand. It was a game changer for us, and it's sort of like uh, we realized that we had earned the right in a way to make product like this as a brand and appeal to the enthusiast and collector community. And so this is certainly going to. I mean, the Strata Timer is certainly going to be a watch that just is forever going to be known as the watch that changed the game for us. And so,
So, so you're gonna do a 10-year anniversary Strata Timer, is what I just heard.
actually,
Another 10 years in the future.
10 years, 10 years of an early style. So we're really pushing the envelope here with um, the quality of our product, just the techniques that we're using,
No,
um, yeah, that kind of stuff.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, I don't even know what I'm planning for dinner tonight. So, over a year, 10 years,
That
crazy.
doesn't work. Doesn't work for watch brands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta have dinner
Strata
planned
Timer's
out
a.
for 5 years.
Yeah. Yep. I can tell my wife tonight, hey, I've got dinner planned for the next 5, 10 years, and she'd die. She'd love it. On to the next one. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when launching
Mhm.
Jack Mason? And then
Yeah.
if you can kind of wrap it up and tell us like how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah. The biggest challenge early on was tr- this is interesting because we were not an e-commerce company. We were a wholesale company. That's how we started the business. We weren't selling online. It was so the challenge was trying to get buyers to buy our product. that
Mhm.
was, then, I had to put my salesman hat on, and that was brutal. You get yeses and you get nos. You obviously get more nos than you get yeses. Um, but I mean, we were going on road shows, traveling all over the country. In some cases, literally knocking on retail doors with a suitcase of watches, and like in the store while there were customers, I would lay out like product and say, "Hey, first it's like, is your buyer in the store?" And yeah, and like show them the product. I mean,
You
there's
you
been
were
a
like
lot
the
of
Jehovah's you were the Jehovah's
yeah,
Witness of the watch
yeah,
industry.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and that was, I mean, there were a lot of random boutique shops in the middle of Missouri that, like, that I've, spent 5 minutes in. But that was, physically, taxing. Um, it was mentally, it wasn't as taxing because I'm so passionate about it. I believed in our product, and so it was just like just a matter of, like, it's a numbers
It'll
game.
it'll come
You know?
eventually. Just keep
Yeah,
at it and it'll happen.
yeah. So that was probably the most challenging thing, trying to get brand recognition out there the old school way. It wasn't through digital ads. It wasn't through, um, anything like that. So, and then we overcame that, just through, just, pulling together mental toughness. I think mental toughness is kind of the biggest thing was you have to almost convince yourself to believe that it's going to work out. And so that was
Yeah.
um, a lot of just chats, a lot of, like I said, pulling together as a team. I can't imagine doing it alone. I know some brands out there do it. It's like a one man show or even a two-man show. That's tough. It's tough.
That's some perseverance.
Yeah, it is. And so, um, yeah, I think it's funny because it has nothing to do with, anything else other than, keeping your mind, right, uh, keeping your head in the game, just focusing and actually believing that you have the right product. I think is what drives you, or it's what drove us forward for sure.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm
first.
I'm sure that sorry, I was just gonna say I'm sure that a lot of like our viewers and listeners would probably appreciate hearing that as well because
Hmm.
a lot of times these brands and people have all these crazy extremities that they go through, and for you it was just like, hey, like it's just mind over matter, like persevere through
It
it,
is.
like don't get down about it. If you have a good product, then of course your product will ultimately shine through because people will believe in you. It's just a matter of believing in yourself. So I like that. But
Yeah.
sorry, Blake.
I was waiting because we asked this question to pretty much every brand, and I'd say like 9 out of 10 times we always hear a supply chain rant. Um,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, another challenge in itself. Um, but that was actually kind of like grounding. That was a grounding
Yeah.
answer.
No, it was. Supply chain is certainly, it's really, so that's the difference between us and a lot of these newer micro brands is that, like supply chain, I had down pat because of all the experience I had. I had all the connections. I had all
Yeah.
the, factory connections. I knew how product development worked. I knew how to plan for product ahead of time to, planning all that, the launch dates, all that sort of stuff. So that, I think that really kind of, we had a little bit of an advantage there. So, experience, it matters, and so, um, from that standpoint, it wasn't that hard. It was really just trying to convince people, hey, we have something good here, um, and just getting more people to know about it.
I'm curious to get your perspective too. I mean, as a designer, like you're clearly like keeping your eyes out in all corners of the watch market,
Hmm.
looking for trends, bringing those trends, experimenting with new design concepts. I mean, trying to
Hmm.
incorporate trends into your design language.
Yeah.
Are there any trends that you'd like to speak about that you've spotted
Hmm.
that you are excited
Hmm.
about, or
Hmm.
that you see are promising? I mean, you see a lot of brands that are kind of catching on to the materials
Yeah.
trend, like in
Yeah.
doing their own materials and case tech, case
Yeah.
materials and things like that. But you don't see that in the micro brand industry. So
Uh-uh.
I'd like to hear your perspective
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. It's interesting. Uh, and I'll drop some nuggets here just because of the world that I came from is a lot of these trends that you have been seeing uh, have been trends that existed in the fashion watch space like 10 years ago. So when you see things like moon phase watches, that was in the fashion watch space a long time ago. No one even understood what it was, and all of a sudden you see a whole bunch of them, right? Um, and one that I thought was interesting was mosaic dials. Mosaic dials. When I joined the Michelle watch brand, like in 2010 ish time frame, we were doing mosaic and mother of pearl mosaic dials like all the time, all day. Like
It's pretty cool.
yeah, and so it's just interesting how you. And what's interesting is actually the higher end Swiss brands, heritage brands, they actually looked to the American fashion watch industry to gain some sort of like inspiration and like that sort of stuff because we were doing all sorts of stuff. That was the beauty of working at a huge conglomerate like Fossil Group. They owned their supply chain, so we were able to experiment all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff. It was just because they have the capital, they have that infrastructure to be able to really get crazy. And so, I mean, diesel watches back in the day, they were doing the absolute craziest things. I
Still
mean, they
are.
were doing, yeah, I mean, they had like half stainless steel, half plastic watches that were like molded and screwed into the watch. It was just crazy. But it's and I'm happy to see all that stuff sort of coming back. It's all sort of cyclical. And I think that what I enjoy seeing is more experimentation in the industry right now, especially in more of the independent, like micro brand space. It's while
Definitely.
these heritage brands, even they continue to move up market. I mean, obviously Rolex is dropping solid gold watches and all that sort of stuff, which is like, kind of boring. Um, but it's once again, it's this segment that's the micro brand, more of the independent, sort of smaller brands that are pushing the industry forward in terms of uh, being like more innovative and things like that. Um, I like to see that, and we're going to start incorporating more of that in Jack Mason. Right now, we're sort of building our catalog back up. We've sort of been in transition from like our previous fashion brand days into more of this enthusiast brand. So it's just taking time to kind of exit some of this product and create a space to ramp up our catalog back up.
Yeah, love that. Um, so I know you guys being, pretty close to your community and everything. I'm sure that you guys, have a pretty good plethora of feedback that you get from people.
Hmm.
How does the feedback from your customers influence the design and then like
Hmm.
ultimately that development process at Jack Mason? Do you guys, take everything as a grain of salt? Do you like, you
Hmm.
really listen to people? Like just explain us through that process.
No, definitely, um, definitely listen a lot. Definitely take a lot of feedback in. I take it very seriously. I read all the reviews. I read all the suggestions, one-off suggestions that someone would make. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I have 20 plus years of watch design experience, but I still miss things. I still uh, there are things that I just don't think about. It just goes over my head. And it's really fascinating to see the community be so passionate about something that they're even thinking about things that like someone like myself just didn't even think about. And and we implement them. Like, I mean, just for example, the uh, our Strata timers that we just launched, we launched 3 new colorways, but one specific one specific suggestion from a single customer was saying for smaller wrists on the bracelet, because of the micro adjusting
Hmm.
clasp in there, when you have an even amount of adjustable links on each side, and for someone who has to remove all the adjustable links because their wrist is so small, well, when they activate the micro adjusting, the clasp actually becomes off centered on the bottom of your wrist.
Hmm.
And so what we did with the new one was we offset the amount. We put more adjustable links on one side than the other to sort of offset that like
Clever.
micro. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would have never thought of that. A, because I don't have the smallest of wrists, so I would have never thought that's something I don't consider. And so, you know, it's important to us to make sure we're listening to them to make product that is ultimately customer centric. You know, but then of course, with that, a lot of things do come through that are just, you just got to take with a grain of salt. You got to filter, um, and so yeah,
Yeah, I think that we all have our fair share of having some people that speak pretty negatively. You've got internet trolls and things like that, but it's good,
yeah,
and ultimately, I like that people kind of keep you on your toes. I
yeah,
think that it's pretty special that you personally go
hmm
through and read and listen to
hmm
people's feedback.
yeah,
That's one of the ways that we grow, as a
yeah,
business, as human beings.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think that it means a lot, and I'm sure that you guys have probably, had a good fair share of things that people recommend that you're like, wow, that's actually a good idea. So let's do that.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
I've said on probably the past like I don't know for the past year or so like if the big brands, the luxury high end brands, like if they listened to their customers and then brands like Jack Mason or you guys may not exist. You
Yeah,
never know, right? Um,
yeah,
because these brands aren't giving the customer what they want. you
yeah,
know so the fact that that you're so design forward, and I mean it's probably challenging, where you have to sit back and say, hey, look, like I have to reassess like this huge design element just to get
yeah,
this feedback to actually like, or this, to get this. But then to your own defense, like as a designer, like everybody uses their watches differently.
yeah.
Like you're gonna use yours differently. I'm gonna use mine differently. Justin totally uses
Right.
his differently, and everybody the same around the world. So, and
Yeah.
so as a designer, like you can't account for every single like use case.
hmm You can't, and it's interesting. And then I think that's where you really have to, if you are a brand owner, you always have to be hyper self-aware of, your like kind of catalog. What do you have in that catalog? Um, and are you hitting each type of like customer? That's I don't, it's not and that has nothing to do with, trying to make something for everyone. I don't think that's right, but you should have a catalog that does kind of address, different types of wear because not all watch collectors are the same, and so
Yep.
making a watch that's more polished versus one that's more tool watchy, more brushed, and that sort of stuff. And so um, that's yeah, it's always a moving target, really.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. Obviously we talked about planning dinner for 5 years. Uh, where do you see the brand heading in the next 5, 10 years?
hmm
And
Yeah,
then the second part of the question is, I'm sure you probably have some goals that you'd
yeah,
hope to accomplish, and
yeah,
if you could discuss those with us.
yeah, yeah. I think within the next 5 years, what we're trying to push towards is becoming the first brand you think of when you think of American sort of luxury, like a premium brand. Maybe luxury is not the right word, but when you think of a high quality watch that is um, a watch that you buy from like a Swatch Group brand, for example, entry level ish,
Mhm.
really up there with the Longines of the world, the Oruses of the world, things like that. I see us really kind of taking that spot. That's what we're trying to aspire to that's what we're working towards, and we're being extremely strategic and methodical and like trying to rebuild our catalog in that manner to really hit that goal. And it's not just making expensive watches for the sake of making expensive watches. I don't think that's right. Um, we have been in business for next year will be 10 years, and so um, I believe we've sort of earned our stripes in a way to kind of go in this direction, but we will do it responsibly. Um, it's no matter what watch we put out there, it's going to be extremely like thought out and high in quality, and a lot of value from that standpoint. Um, and like I said, in the next 5 years, that's sort of the sort of the pedestal that we want to be standing on, and we hold ourselves to an extremely high standard. And so, um, right now we are based in Texas, and so eventually, I want all I like. It'd be great to have 2, 3 watchmakers right behind me, like putting all of our watches together in house. Doing all that sort of stuff. I think that is the kind of ultimate goal. We really want to be known as, especially in our home state here in Texas. There's Texas pride is a whole nother level, and
Definitely.
be, we want to be the like become kind of a household name here. And so we're definitely working towards that, and remain sort of independent. And we're never going to be. We're not going to get into like horology or anything like that. There's plenty of brands that in Switzerland that can do that, and that's not a place that we're going to try to even like go into because frankly, that's not who we want to be. We just want to offer a high quality timepiece that's going to last you a long time, and really, with really good um, design, and to be able to say, hey, this is an American brand. Um, I think is something that is missing right now. Honestly, I mean, Hamilton, went to they are an American brand, but they're a Swiss made. They're owned by Swatch Group, right? Or Richmond.
Swatch
Richmond?
Group.
Yeah, Swatch. So, I mean, that's kind of our aspirations is to really, well, I like to say we want to be the Christopher Ward of the U.S. You know, uh, now they're doing all sorts of crazy, incredible things over there. And again,
Definitely.
yeah, that's not who we want to be. I mean, in many ways, that's not American either, right? Americans are just like, let's take what works and just keep doing that, repeat, rinse and repeat, do it really well. It's like an F-150 truck. You know what I mean? That thing has like the same engine for the last 20 years or whatever, just because it works. You know what I mean? It's solid, it's dependable. I mean, I think that's kind of like that is sort of the American spirit. It's not we're not the most innovative. It's just make something that's reliable, that can last generations. I think that's sort of the attitude that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows. I mean, it really shows. Like I said, obviously, it's one thing when you go to an intersect or a
Hmm.
watch show or something like that, and you just see your watch for 5 minutes or whatever, and you're kind of lost in the sea of brands.
Hmm.
Um, but I would encourage a lot of people out there, not just because you're here, but
Hmm.
to obviously look at Jack Mason early if you're considering on getting a timepiece or something that you could feel confident in, and something that's I mean even that little keeper, that little
Yeah.
like
Oh
keeper,
yeah.
that little button that you designed that holds the the strap down. It's like I never seen that before. And at first it was weird to me. I was like, this is super weird, because I'm used to looking down at my wrist and seeing like,
Yeah.
like a little strap hanging up, and it's just so familiar to me. But
Yeah.
as I started using it, I was like, oh, okay, like this is cool, this
Yeah.
is super
Yeah.
cool.
I thought that was a Christmas ornament. I'm just kidding.
And then, of course, packaging, right? Like
Mhm.
whenever I open, we don't do the unboxing stuff. Like we do the YouTube
Mhm.
reviews, and we don't, I
Right.
mean, I get the box and the packaging is all part of the experience, but, um, everything just felt so like intentional,
Mhm.
like you said.
Mhm.
And then, I
Mhm.
mean, you had like a little note there, that,
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
clearly you said this a production watch, it wasn't like a prototype or something.
Yeah.
And so I got to feel what it would be like to be a Jack Mason customer again for
Mhm.
the second time. And
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, even in the early days, I considered, the Jack Mason experience.
Mhm.
Like when I first got that watch, like dude, I would wear it everywhere. Like I
Mhm.
don't wear it as much anymore. Um, but I wear it everywhere. And then,
Yeah.
at the time I got it really early into my collecting journey. So, most collectors when they first start, they'll put their boxes up on like little like
Yeah.
shelving units and make like a little mini
Yeah.
display. And yeah, for I don't know, 3 to 4 years, your little Jack Mason box was up there on my, my little watch wall, and
That's awesome.
and yeah, I wore it through, I don't know, like 7, 8, 9 countries.
Wow. That's cool.
Um, and I've had some. I mean, I ended up taking it off the bracelet and putting it on a NATO, and it just,
Mhm.
dude, a green NATO rocked that thing out, man.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's crazy to think about, and that's going back to, I mean, going back full circle, right? Like from the
Right.
beginning of the podcast, like, these are experiences. Owning a watch is an experience. And you build
Mhm.
moments and memories and share your life with your watch.
Yeah.
Um, And I mean, for people that don't understand watches, don't understand that, you know?
Yeah, experience is everything. Experience is a huge part of our brand. That's the reason why I was telling you earlier. It's uh, even just coming up with copy on our website is important because every time every time there's an email or social media post or advertisement or whatever it may be, that's one touch point with a potential customer or even an existing customer, right? And so that touch point is everything. You might have 5 seconds with that customer. And so
Make an impression.
what can you, yeah, what can you do in 5 seconds? You know what I mean? And so you want to make sure you're not overlooking that. It means a lot. It's so at least we put a lot of value in that. So that is, when it comes to the packaging and that kind of stuff. I mean, when you look to the best of the best, like Apple products, for example, God, that whole thing is an experience. There's a reason why they put the product for as soon as you open a box, you see the product. Like that's the
That's
first
right.
thing you see, and then all the mess is underneath it, right? All the accessories and stuff are underneath it, and that's intentional. That's like, hey, we want you to see what you bought, and so um, those kinds of things make a difference. I have a high appreciation for that kind of stuff, and so trying to incorporate that into our overall brand experience. And we have some more ideas on how to enhance that even more going forward, and as well as even sending off like press pieces, for example. Like, what is that experience for you guys? You know, um, it's I think that's kind of a next step for us. In We don't want to just send you a watch, in a box like every other brand. You know what I
We
mean? It's like, how do you? Yeah,
I've gotten like prototype watches that don't exist, and
yeah,
I've gotten watches in Grand Seiko like rolls that have not, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
It's literally I've gotten just a single watch, like in like a little like peanuts, like just a watch, like just laying there in the bottom of it. Um, and of course, like like I'm like, all right, well, since you sent the watch to me this way, I'm gonna send it back to you this the same
Yeah.
way. So,
I take very
Yeah.
special pride in my stuff as well. And you can ask Blake, he can attest to this. I'm very like OCD about taking care of
Yeah.
things, like making them clean.
Yeah.
Of course, whenever I'm shooting, product shots, I'm doing videos, photos, I'm trying to make sure it's as clean as possible, to an extent. But I mean, same thing, that Elm that you had, of course, kind of let
Yep.
me
it's
have for a little
beautiful.
bit. Yeah, beautiful watch. Yeah.
Thank you.
I was like, man, I have to like do justice, like sending this back to Peter, because like it was perfect. I was like, dude, like I'm getting this virgin watch. I don't want to mess it up. So I mean, I did, I sent it back,
Yeah.
and I was as precious as it could be with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I'm in total agreement. I think that it's part of the experience. And
Mm.
I like that you guys kind of take that into consideration, because a lot of people
Yeah.
do.
You
Yeah.
you hold an epic title because you remember when I was in San Francisco and we bumped shoulders and I was there with my
Yep.
wife and we were just kind of
Yeah.
like doing
I
some
remember.
early circling and then my wife like picked up the Ellum, right, and she was
Hmm.
like, oh, this is fucking cool, like this is amazing. Like
Yeah.
my wife, like you have no idea, like my wife has never said that. My wife hates watches and
She
she would
she hears watches 24/7 around him. So whenever she
yeah.
Oh
hears the
yeah.
term watch, she's like the other way.
Well, she used to edit. She used to edit these podcasts, and so like as we progressed, like we got better at talking and keeping our flow
Right.
together. And so I was like, all right, I can just spare you from editing the podcast, so that way I can talk about watches a little bit more in the normal
Right.
life. But
Right.
um, to me, that was crazy because like I said, she would burn all those watches at windup if
Yeah.
she could, send them back to the scrapyard. And the fact that she like really resonated with the
Yeah.
Ellum was kind of cool. You were there, you saw.
That's
So
yeah. That's great to hear. Yeah. No.
so
That's.
you're definitely
Yeah.
onto something special.
Yeah, and
And
I agree.
Thank
I
you.
think the linen dial and everything is great. I know you guys have had iterations before that, but that just
Hmm.
the light catches and stuff, like at
Yeah.
angles, that little
Yep.
curvature on the crystal, dude, it's beautiful. We
Thank you.
actually, yeah, we actually just posted a website article, just kind of a little short, get some good professional photos in there, and you can see some of that.
Yeah.
So for any
Okay.
viewers and listeners, you guys can check that out. It's on Lonely Wrist. And then of course we're doing some video content for some of those watches too, so you guys can look forward to seeing that, and I know you're excited for that, Peter, so look forward to
Yeah.
it.
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm looking
by the
forward to it.
time this drops, everybody will have seen our YouTube reviews and all that. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll pair them up, and we'll save the Ellum review for the date that this drops, and so we'll
Great.
sync those up. But yeah, we wanted to thank you for spending just an hour with us and talking about the brand and talking about the future and giving us some insight. We've been kind of doing this weird little thing at the end
Hmm.
where we essentially turn our platform over to you.
Hmm.
So here is the speaking floor. You've been talking for an hour, of course. So if you don't
Yeah.
have anything to say, I understand. But
Yeah.
here's your
Yeah.
opportunity to speak directly to our listeners and say
Yeah.
something that maybe we didn't talk or touch about. So
Sure. No, I appreciate it. First of all, thanks for having me on your guys' show. Big fans of you guys. Obviously, good people. And that's why we do it, is to be able to meet new people, and hang out and chat and talk watches. But I guess if there was a message that I'd like to throw out there is that you know I do believe we have an interesting story to tell, Jack Mason. I know, when we kind of burst onto the scene with our GMT watch, uh, we kind of burst onto the scene. People were like, "Well, where did these guys come from?" And it's like, "Hey, we've kind of been here this entire time, flying under the radar. The only reason why you didn't see us is because we were selling to a different type of customer." And so now that we've sort of repositioned ourselves, and um, been and sort of rebranded in a way. There's going to be a lot more exciting things happening with the brand. Now that all of our focus, my focus, is on creating these really exquisite timepieces. I'm eager to continue to sort of uh, be more involved with the community, with the watch community. It's been awesome, especially going to all these shows and things like that. We have so much to share. We have so much passion and uh, like love for our own brand. There's a lot of pride there, and so um, yeah, we're like I said, we're just looking forward to the next 12 months. Honestly, there's a lot of great things that are going to happen. A lot more collaborations that are going to happen. Um, we are Dr. Pepper. We have renewed that license, so we'll do another Dr. Pepper, but as well as
That's awesome.
um,
Nice.
some other amazing collaborations. So that'll be coming down the pipeline. And yeah, where like I said, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to tell our story because it is a genuine one, and we hope that uh, you know that comes across in everything that we do. So
Yeah.
thank you guys. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean,
Thank you.
we knew we had to have you on. I mean, everything you like I said, we're fans of yours as well, and we appreciate everybody who we're early into the game. We're just over a year now of Lonely Wrist, and the growth has been crazy and insane. Like it's just me and Justin, doing this thing
hmm yeah,
from zero. So yeah, I mean the fact is, that brands like yours support us,
yep,
and help
Yeah.
us get hands on with your products and help us build content.
yep,
It's amazing. So we love and appreciate you as a brand and uh and yeah, we're looking forward to the next 12 months as well.
awesome.
All right, everybody, that wraps up our interview with Peter from Jack Mason. Make sure you check out Jack Mason online, jackmasonbrand.com. I will plug and link all the descriptions or plug and link all the links in the description so you can check Peter out. Definitely go on to their website and watch that series that I talked about where you really get to kind of see Peter do his magic and build these watches. I would highly recommend it. I highly enjoyed watching every single episode. So I'd encourage everybody to do that. And of course, if you like Jack Mason, pick you one up. We will see everybody on the next episode.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.